Well, I think Nick's running a little behind. Let's just turn off the chill beats for a second here. Turn off the chill beats. Let's see. As you can see, Nick is in. He's a little bit gray right now. I feel like Garth when Wayne all of a sudden leaves him in control of the screen, the show. There's one person watching, which might just be me. Oh, there we go. Oh, I need him to do boom arm. Guest is in the green room. Let's assign guest to guest 1. There we go.
There I am. I was in like a little muted mode, it looked like. I guess that's the green room.
You're in the green room where you can do your hair and get all pretty.
Because you already hit live.
I did, yes. I was testing out a nil. You
Yes.
missed. You'll have to watch the. There's like a fancy countdown right to 10 o'clock. Keeps me on, or 11 o'clock for me, but keeps me on.
Right. Yes. The time zones have shifted. All right. I should still record my end.
I still don't understand why something can be on my calendar. I can see it yesterday multiple times, and then today I'm still surprised that said thing is on my calendar for the day.
That sneaks up on me with some like work meetings.
Yeah. I remember work meetings. Actually, I don't, but
I don't know. I mean, you have to do a lot of client meetings, right?
yeah, it's there's something, there's like a work meeting can be very high pressure, but also it's kind of like an excuse to not have to do the work. You're just going and chatting. I'm overgeneralizing here a lot in terms of whether you're running the meeting, whether it's my memory of meetings at work were never very well done meetings, and so yeah.
Yes. In fact, I've had a meeting in recent weeks about how to have better meetings. So
Sure.
a specific kind of meeting that needs a specific outcome, but
Right.
we need to get better at it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Corporations
Yeah.
and their meetings.
We're promoting synergy over here.
Synergy and the TPS reports getting in properly for the fourth quarter here. When's the quarter end for you? Is it it's probably not, doesn't end at the year end or whatever, like what makes sense? Or do you care about quarters?
Well, no, I think something weird just changed because they changed our benefits year. Like it used to be we would sign up for insurance at the end of March, and now it's at the end of the year. So like everything shifted a quarter. I don't know. I don't know if that reflects anything.
Yeah. New CEO, got to make some changes, make company his own. Shift the insurance claims.
Yeah.
Start with the big stuff and work your way down. Anyways, don't want to get you fired, so.
Yeah. My opinions are my own. It's pretty tame.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. What do we got? Console, PC, Apple. Looking good. Sonic 2 updates. Like the movie? Or what's Sonic 2? Oh, okay. Right, because it's, yeah. It's funny how my brain just assumes, picks it up as if it's not a video game first. It's now just like, in my brain is like this movie my kids kind of like, and I'm kind of it was okay.
Yeah. Well, for extra confusion, I think, so I think Knuckles is in this movie in Sonic 2, but in the original Sega game series, he was in Sonic 3, not Sonic 2.
Keep the consistency. All right.
Uh-oh, Siri Knowledge needs to update. The autocomplete for Sonic 2 release date is November 21st, 1992. And not the movie.
Yeah, it's surprising actually that the movie doesn't take precedence, because that's what actually makes the money. Somebody's going to get fired.
Okay. I think. Yeah. Okay. I think we've got. I'm sure we'll find stuff to talk about, but I think we've got a little bit lighter notes this week.
Yeah. Which is okay. Nobody has any time to listen this month anyways, right? Keep it short.
Yeah.
All right. Can I do... I always forget to do markers on Twitch. I don't know if it does anything. I had it set up as a shortcut, but I don't even know if it actually works anymore. Maybe I put a marker. Add a stream marker. Let's try it on the dashboard. Well, I got a checkbox anyways. There's one. I guess my Stream Deck marker doesn't work anymore.
It looks like you finished your Vader.
My Vader. Oh, yes. Where is it? Yes.
Yeah.
Did finally. My son actually brought it down. We were watching. I can't remember what we were going to watch, and he brought it down. He's like, "You're doing this now." It's like an assignment I had to finish because they were tired of seeing the half-finished Vader on my shelf.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's good when your kids help you keep your projects in order and on task.
Yeah, stay on task.
Yeah. All right. Hello and welcome to 25 Cents, our video game podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Nick. Each episode will be making the rounds through our four corners: console, PC, Apple, and tabletop, with a focus on games that are great to play if you've got kids.
And you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on the web at Goodstuff.network. I was worried there for a second because I had covered up the levels, the audio levels, and I thought I had muted your track at one point and forgot to check if it unmuted you automatically while I was doing the little thing, but luckily we're all good. I think everybody can hear. If you're out there watching, please let us know. Obviously, if you can't hear somebody, not the podcast people because it's too late at that point, but we do live stream this occasionally, twitch.tv/GSFM for the Good Stuff channel if you want to join us most Tuesday, or every other Tuesday, I guess, not most Tuesdays, but mostly every other Tuesday is what I'm trying to say. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. I always like it when listening to a podcast and you hear the host, make some terrible nerd error in a fact, and then they correct themselves about 30 seconds later and then have to say, please don't email us. Yeah. Please don't email us, right?
That is the benefit.
I'm sure we've...
I was going to say, that's the benefit of not having a ton of listeners, and that's the upside is you don't have people. Even if everybody emailed us, it would only be 20 emails or so right now. So that's you can actually email us or contact us if we make a mistake at this point. But if you're listening in the future when we've gotten super successful and there's 100,000 subscribers, then
going through the back catalog.
Yeah. Exactly. So we are recording this on December 14th. So what is that? 2 weeks, just over 10 days away from the Christmas Day extravaganza, or whatever that means in your household. But it's are you feeling the stress of did the holidays bring on stress of gift giving, buying, all those things, or is it kind of like a chill drink some eggnog?
I think there's a little bit the gift buying, right, which is making sure we understand what everyone's wish list items are, and stressing that we don't have anything. If my parents are listening, they can be tough to buy for sometimes because it seems like they have what they want and don't need anything else. But I think the bigger stress is the coordinating, since all our family is local, coordinating who's where on which days is our main source of holiday stress. It's not that bad, but just figuring out in any given year,
right? Like both
who's
sides
hosting, who's bringing food. Yeah. So my
right.
parents, my sister, my wife's sister, and her mom are all within an hour or so of us. So it's a lot of fun that we can all gather together, but coordinating who's where, who's bringing what food gets a little complicated around this time.
Yeah, and who's going to be offended at which food they didn't bring, or whose kids aren't sleeping, or not, or are sleeping, and all those fun family things. But that's where, luckily, video games, to segue us into our actual episode, video games are the great equalizer, hopefully. Unless you're
certainly uniter or distractor, unless you're very competitive. And for those of you out there, maybe the holidays are a time to finally get in one more win against that relative that you haven't seen in a while.
And hopefully not that one guy retweeted or quote tweeted or whatever. Any Christian family man who has time for video games doesn't read his Bible enough. So hopefully that guy isn't in your family.
Yeah, I, 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 I'm not like a super biblical scholar, but I don't remember video games coming up that much in any of the Paul's letters or anything,
Yeah.
you know.
Maybe in the Thessalonians
Um,
or the whatever. Yeah.
yeah, it's in the Apocrypha. You got to really dig into the,
I
the.
always find it. I just to let myself rant a little bit because I didn't on Twitter, but the I always find it funny that video games get singled out, and like culturally it does too. Obviously, over and above any other medium, like football. Like I have friends who more power to them, but like they watch football a lot. Like many hours on a weekend are spent watching football. Or F1 racing
Mhm.
apparently is really huge now again, or now. And people spend hours, get up early, etc. That's all good, but the idea that someone would sit in front of a video game console with a controller and walk through a story or play a sports game or whatever thing it is for a few hours is the thing that we need to smash the pulpits with or whatever. And that's always just funny how it's just an easy
I
target. I
mean,
know.
yeah, the moral panics, whether it's video games or Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs or comic books or even just uh, like pulp novels, right?
Yeah,
Were considered a threat, a great threat to our children at one point. It's all cyclical, and
yeah,
I do wonder if video games have a little bit more of it because it's interactive, right? So because you have some agency over, the objectionable content to some, right? Like the whether it's the violence or the relationships between characters or whatever the case may be. That maybe is a little bit more because it's like, oh, you as the player, even though obviously the developers made it possible for that to happen in the game, you as the
yeah.
player are choosing to do these things in a more active way, and I think that might make it continue to be more of a lightning rod for uh, tweets like that one.
Yes, yes, exactly. So, all right, well, let's move on to our actual discussions for the episode. You caught somehow I missed this in all the fun of holiday stuff, but Star Wars Eclipse cinematic trailer was released. What's this going on?
Yeah, so there are a couple things that came out of the Game Awards. I think we referenced it a little in the previous episode. My understanding is it's not that huge of a deal in the industry, but there's still it's more of just a marketing event, even more so than other award shows. But a couple things got released, including the Star Wars Eclipse trailer. So it's from Quantic Dream, who is sort of notorious for weird story games. They've had several over the last few years, and I think they kind of end up being a little bit of a critical darling, but also they have a pretty bad reputation as a studio in terms of like crunch time and these other things, right? But they got a Star Wars license for a quote action adventure multiple character branching narrative game. So if you can wander through the word salad there, it's going to be you're going to be kind of choose your own adventuring your way through some interactive fiction, which fits the other kind of games they've released. Setting wise, it you can see in the trailer like some Trade Federation ships, if you remember the episode one and the prequels, but they specifically said this is part of what was codenamed Project Luminous or the High Republic setting. So it's a few hundred years before the Star Wars movies we know, um, which has been currently the last 2 years or so, where a ton of the novels and comic books and other media in the franchise is being set, as kind of an unexplored space. Obviously, all the like Disney Plus originals and stuff are kind of with familiar characters, and we've had the new movies, but a lot of the new stories are happening in this unexplored space where they can create new planets and new aliens and new storylines with the Jedi, but without you know being too tied into the Skywalker saga that we know and has been saturating
Yeah,
our screens since 1977.
yeah. It looks really good, and I think there's just so much undiscovered, and almost like I sense even from my kids they're a bit bored with the same Star Wars story and do want sort of their own Star Wars story almost in the same way that they get their own Marvel. The new stuff that's coming out from Marvel is their sort of generation stories, even though they're obviously rehashing a lot of comic book storylines. But similarly, I think with Star Wars, it's like they get the epicness of it, and it was great to have the 3 new movies that came out. But whether video games or otherwise, it's kind of like they want to have their own
Right.
new thing for them as well. And there is so much untapped potential in the story in that universe. I think that's super interesting. So, oh,
Sorry, it just got paged, but it's just
we
an
can pause if you
escalation.
need to.
Just have to acknowledge it. Um, no, it's a pending one. That's not my responsibility. Okay. Yeah, we're good. Sorry, you can edit that out. I'm on call this week for those of you watching live.
Extra special trick or tip or not tip bonus for the bonus content for the people who
Yes.
watch the video version. The both of you that
Yes,
watch it.
or for those of you that have a pager that makes that sound effect, I apologize that you have now panicked.
Yeah. Is that a universal pager sound effect? Is that like?
I don't know. It's like an app. I'm not sure
okay.
if it's outside of.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, yeah. So I think to go off of what you were saying, right? The different settings, like when Disney bought Star Wars, they kind of wiped the slate clean, right? There's all of the bad novels that I read in the '90s. Some of them were okay, and even some of our favorite Star Wars tie-in games that we've mentioned before, like Knights of the Old Republic. Those are now kind of non-canonical. They happened in a different timeline, but this stuff is now supposed to be fully integrated with the greater Star Wars universe, and can make reference to the new movies. But like you said, it's a story in a different time. There'll be some familiar stuff. In the trailer, you can see a younger Yoda in the Jedi Temple, right? So it'll tie in with what the kids know maybe about the franchise, but it's its own thing. That said, Quantic Dream, I would expect content-wise, even though it's still rating pending, this is probably going to be at least teen, if not mature, if I'm remembering, from some of their other games. So that may change things a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's whether it's appropriate or not. We're still making our way through Clone Wars, which is like we've now settled on the fact that we're not going to watch every single episode we're watching. They're sort of like it's not the machete cut of the Star Wars movies, but it's a similar idea of like, here's what's important, here's what's not. We have an Apple Notes document with like, here's the episodes to watch, and then these ones are optional. Because there is like really fun story elements, not to diverge too far down the Clone Wars or show rabbit trail, but there is some really fun storylines in there, and also stuff that gets revealed and talked about, and backstories filled in and things like that do. And it's actually my younger two that are really interested in watching it. Older one, not so much. But anyways, it's kind of fun to catch up on. It's also like it's a good time to like have a little nap while I'm watching TV with the kids if it's a boring episode.
Yeah, I've been slowly working through it when there's not other stuff to watch. I think I'm somewhere in the late 5th, early 6th season, and similarly jumping around and using a watch list to follow along. But I didn't watch it as it was coming out. Any of the new series. I think it was on. It was some weird channel that I didn't have. But now it's all on Disney Plus, obviously.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think the one thing that's interesting is the showrunners did a much better job of depicting a fall into darkness than the prequel movies and the writing of George Lucas. I think you can kind of see the fear leads to anger stuff developing a little bit more in Anakin. Sorry, spoilers for Empire Strikes Back. Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader.
How dare you?
Don't listen to this with your younger kids. And there's all these other shows that are coming, right? You look at that Disney slate of all their Marvel and Star Wars content that's coming, and it's like increasingly overwhelming.
Yeah.
But there was an interesting, I think it was on a recent episode of Downstream, which is a Relay FM podcast with Jason Snell about the streaming market. And they were talking about how right now Disney has this super strength of, Pixar and Marvel and Star Wars, but how do they get people in to stay for like other content, and especially for younger kids content, which they don't actually, despite being Disney, they don't actually have a ton of for like the sort of younger set. So
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, and we've seen like some Disney branded games for like Apple Arcade coming out, and obviously they have a whole Disney interactive media empire. And how will that connect in with, like we're going to have shows and we're going to have games and like Lego Star Wars and like all this stuff all interconnected. Um, these huge media companies are obviously they know they want to, like you said, provide that space where kids can play and imagine and be exposed to these stories, and they want you on every screen
Yeah.
and in
Exactly.
the books and with your toys.
Which I should just mention. I think it's almost required mentioning at this point. It's I don't know how it's taken them so long to do. I mean, let's blame COVID, but like the Star Wars, the Skywalker saga in Lego Star Wars video game was supposed to be out like early 2021, I think, or something like that. Anyways, it's now
I think
delayed
so,
to
yeah.
spring 2022. I know my son had it. I thought it was on his Christmas list even last year already, but maybe I'm remembering a different game. But it's just it's a bizarre one because the first 6 movie games were already finished before, and I think they even had one of them. Anyways, it's kind of like somehow the combination. Maybe they're doing a lot of cool upgrades and hopefully fixing bugs in past versions or whatever, and upgrading the graphics a bit or whatever it is. But anyways, if and when it eventually comes out, it will be a fun game to
Yeah,
play. I know my kids are excited about it.
I think I have the original trilogy one on Steam, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or have played it before. But I think that one of the big gimmicks with the Lego Star Wars games is, notwithstanding the little mobile ones that we've mentioned on the show recently, is that you can go back and play the story levels with different characters, right? So you can unlock, Finn in the most recent trilogy, and then go back and play like Cloud City levels from Empire Strikes Back with him as your main character.
Right.
Because they kind of tend to have character classes where there's like droids can unlock these things and Jedi can do these things and blaster troopers can do these things and so forth. So on any given level, there's different paths through the level depending on which character you're playing, which category of character you're playing, and then you can play, with the different characters from different movies. So I again, that's that kind of playset mashup, cross franchise thing that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we leave PC Corner, did you? I know you picked up Civilization 6, and I actually managed to grab it as well when it went back on sale. I missed it when it was on sale the first time in November, and then it was on sale again in December. Now I see it's not on sale again. So
Yeah.
there's
Well,
like,
it's on sale, but not as on sale.
yeah, it's got like or I'm looking at the Platinum bundle, I think, which is the one I picked up, which was $20, and there's the higher end bundle yet. Anyways, that I think you picked up. I'm looking at the Canadian pricing, so it's going to throw things off a little bit. But at any rate,
Right.
have you actually had a chance to play Civilization yet? Or
I I have not had a chance to play. It's been a busy couple of weeks with holiday prep and work. But I do have it installed, and it is my intention to fit in some time when I'm off for winter break, because as we've discussed at length, the Civ series is a favorite of mine, and I kind of want to get into some of the new expansions that I unlocked with this sale.
yeah, I'm curious how well. Like I have it on my MacBook Pro, both actually on the Windows side. I guess either way, right? Like I can boot camp, or with Steam I can play it on the Mac side, which I tried now this week. I just played for 20 minutes of a new game on the Mac side, and it actually performs really well. I wasn't sure how well it was actually going to. It takes up about 20 gigs of space on the version I got, so I'm
Hmm.
curious how well it's optimized for or not the Intel, the Apple Silicon version that you have on that would be on your iMac, right? And it should perform
Well,
fairly
yeah.
well with Rosetta, or whichever one it's
So
called now.
it's not. Yeah, it's running under Rosetta 2. There's not actually an Apple Silicon build of the game. But I guess I did launch the game to run the little performance test, because I just wanted to see if it worked, and if and the performance test involves like a completely full map with many units and cities, And it was definitely bogging down, but it was at least as performant as like Civ 5 was on my now almost 8-year old
Yeah.
um, Intel iMac, right? So, and you rarely get into a game state where it's got that much stuff on screen. So
Yeah.
yeah, quite impressed, and I think that goes to the discussion we've had in previous episodes around kind of um, Apple Silicon, even just the base M1 chip, but now especially these Pro and Max chips that they're working on, um, is actually pretty good at games. It's just there aren't really games for Mac that exercise it in that way, right?
Exactly.
And I don't think anyone would say like, oh, PC Corner, I'm gonna really do all of my primary gaming on a Mac.
No. You'd have to be pretty far down the rabbit hole of Apple hardcore nerd. Like,
Yeah,
well, yeah, like John Gruber bought his kid a massive gaming PC because he knew as much as an Apple nerd as he is, it's just not happening. So, speaking of
yep,
Apple, let's transition into the Apple corner. So, Apple's 2021 Apple Store award winners. I do this every year. Highlight some of the best apps across their various stores, iPhone and Mac, etc. And the gaming, which is of interest to us, it's interesting to me that they break out Apple TV game, Apple iOS game, Apple Arcade game, and then Apple game. Anyways, the I still haven't actually really spent much time playing Apple TV games, even though that was like one of the things I was holding out to try it on,
yeah.
and just because of the controller switching, etc. And there's just more to do when we get down if we're playing games on the TV. Did you try the Apple TV game of the year was Space Marshals 3? Did you try that one out at all this year?
No, I had not even heard of that one.
Which is yeah, it's funny.
So
And then if you go to the
um,
store page, I'll just say this: it's kind of funny because you go to the App Store preview page for that. It says very in like right under the thing, the game name, designed for iPad. So it's kind of like yes, it works on Apple TV, but clearly, which is hopefully the long play here is that they can design for iPad and it works just as well in Apple TV. But it is kind of this
right.
funny, weird little world we're living in where it's kind of like what game do you pick for Apple TV as the best game of the
I
year?
imagine that the design for iPad is in part saying like, this is a more of a full screen game, right? Like it's not
Yeah,
squeezed onto a mobile style phone game, and the way you interact with it, right?
yeah.
It looks like it's a kind of a tactical squad shooter, like in the vein of XCOM or one of those
Hmm.
games. That was never really my genre, but yeah, I think I played some Syndicate way back, but um, yeah, it's for if you like that game, I'm sure it's pretty good on Apple TV. I think for me, the Apple TV games we've tried a few, but the problem is you're taking over the room, right?
Yeah.
To play, whereas most of my gameplay is like on my phone because that's just my device.
Hmm. Yeah, and the multiplayer stuff still doesn't feel great on the Apple TV. There's a few games that
Hmm.
are multiplayer supported, and so this is I'm in a family of five, and so yeah, if you're taking over the TV and you're also saying no or it's awkward to share or multiplayer play or whatever, it just doesn't inspire a lot
Right.
of desire to do that. At least, despite the fact that I
Yeah.
guess I can also
Compared
say
to
Fortnite takes over, which is a single player game as well, but
right.
that's between my kids and their issues. So
It's teaching them conflict resolution and
yeah.
sharing, right?
And screaming louder than their sibling.
Yeah. Who can win?
The Apple Arcade game of the year was Fantasian, which I remember hearing and reading about it, and seeing that it was coming, and then when it came out, and it does look like a fun RPG. Did you? I can't remember if you played this at all.
No, I it's one. So as we've discussed before, a lot of my arcade play, I'm trying to pick games that I can play with my son, and this one
Hmm.
looked like a little bit more, past where he is, and then um, so yeah, I haven't checked it out. It's got this really cool art style where they like photographed some models for all the backgrounds, and then the 3D game elements are projected on top of that. I think Game Center told me that one of my friends is playing it, that I know from college. Um, so I guess people are playing it, and it looks cool. It's that kind of like RPG style. I think also it's one of those games where it looks like a bigger time investment for the story, so I'm
Yeah.
like less inclined to pick that up compared to like Galaga Plus, where I know it's just like, oh, I'll play a few levels and then I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So I've been doing much more of the snackable arcade Apple Arcade experiences lately.
And then the Mac game of the year was Myst, which is kind of just that funny. Obviously, it's new, but it's old, and still, it says a lot about the Mac gaming category, like we just said. That Myst, the reissue of Myst, can be the game of the year in 2021. And especially, I guess, a line, yeah, like I'm not sure what their definition of it. I think it had to be like maybe a Mac only game is maybe how they categorize that. I'm not sure. They, being Apple, I don't think they ever really would say, because you look at like the next category of the most downloaded iOS apps and games, Minecraft, Among Us, Roblox, obviously being there. I think a lot of people would argue that some of those would be among the game of the year, but maybe they've already won in past years, and so they're just wanting to highlight
Right.
Myst as a popular game. But at any rate,
Well, yeah, I was curious. I went and looked back to see if Myst in its original release as, at the time a Mac only, when it first came out, it was Mac only in 1994, I think. And I was curious if like Apple at the time had given it any kind of awards, and it didn't look like it. I couldn't find any information on that, and I didn't remember. I know it won some awards at the time. Um, but it's also interesting because, like we've said, Myst has had all these different versions over the years and re-releases, and there was Real Myst, and there was a Myst. There was like a mobile iOS port of the original game. There was just kind of like running in a little weird container, and this is like the remaster, so it's $30 for Mac. So it's kind of basically it's like an all new game. But yeah, I this one kind of feels like maybe it's recognizing the franchise and the history of the game more than the game itself.
mm-hmm.
I wonder if that was a factor in making it Mac Game of the Year. Because it certainly was a Mac game during the dark days, right, where there was not a lot of
Yeah.
options, and actually some really interesting gaming stuff was happening on Mac only in the mid 90s, but never became established as a platform.
Yeah. I see you have
And then you were talking the iOS games, and we have that list in there. But I thought it was interesting that Plague Inc. was high on that list because it's a game that's been out for several years, and the primary game mode is to play as a virus and
yeah.
kill everyone in the world. So there's an interesting cathartic psychology going on there. I did see maybe last year sometime they added a game mode where you can play as the United Nations trying to stop the virus from
Right.
spreading. But yeah, it's funny that that's in their top paid list. That people are maybe there's a control thing, right? It's like, well, it's hard to manage the real pandemic, but in this little game simulation, I have complete power.
Yeah. Yeah, it's number 2 in simulation right now as we record around the world, and they're boasting about, where did I see that? Over 1 billion games played. So,
Yeah.
Killing billions has never been so fun, according to the IGN review. Just
Yes.
yeah, all the fun stuff.
That was also a game that we had tried with my son, and he was like kind of interested in the simulation games, and I had purchased it many years ago. He seemed to like it, and then something switched, and he told me it was too scary and too much like the real thing, so he wanted it uninstalled.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting shift, that he was fine with it, and then he wasn't
Yeah.
at age 7 or so.
Hit a little too close to home for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
And you're getting some high score texts from your kids. Speaking of,
Yeah, so often on weekends I'll sleep in. The this iPad unlocks at, I think we have it set for 7:30 in the morning on weekends. So sometimes he'll get up and be playing games on it before we wake up, and I'll wake up to a text that's like, I just set a new high score in threes. Because it'll there's like the little share button in a lot of games,
right?
which I guess is designed to kind of be a way to promote the game to your friends and convince them to play. But it's just funny to get these little updates of what he's been playing that way.
I had my son ask me the other day. He was like, because we were having actually a family discussion about screen time or whatever, and then somehow he's like, "But you've been playing," and I forget which game it was, but something on Apple Arcade. You've been playing that every time I look, and it says, Game Center tells me that you're playing this game. and I was like, I haven't played that game in like months. I literally have not touched it, and so it's just funny how it doesn't. And I have played other games, and it kind of gets stuck or something, or maybe it's a
Yeah.
promotional thing. I don't know, but like, yeah, certain games sort of get stuck in the what your friends are playing thing.
Yeah, I've noticed that with the Game Center widget is like it'll show me that like my wife is playing a game that she hasn't had for like a year, right? And partially I think that's because she's not playing a ton of games, so it's not there's not a lot of new stuff to refresh it. And some of my friends too. It's like, oh, are you still playing? Uh, whatever. And I've even asked them about it, and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't played that in months.
Yeah,
So there's something a little funky with how Game Center it as we've said before, the social aspects of Game Center are kind of um, nascent compared to like your Xbox Live or other networks.
yeah. If you just by
Um,
way of interest, the Xbox app, a friend of mine just picked up an Xbox and signed into the app and stuff. And we added each other as friends, and basically, like I get notified literally every time he signs on to play a game, any game, doesn't matter what it is. I just get a notification. So and so is signed on to Xbox. So and so is signed on to Xbox, and which is almost on the other extreme of like being a little too creepy, a little too many notifications. And obviously, I can
mhm.
dial down the notifications and turn them off or whatever. But for like even for if for parents with kids, if not that you want to like be aware of every single moment your kid plays a game, but like if you are like we should have been back when our kid was in grade 3 or whatever, and he was sneaking down at 6 a.m. to go turn on the Xbox and then secretly putting it away before coming up and looking tired at 7 in the morning.
Ooh, clever.
Yeah, we would have been able to just see like, oh, he signed on to the Xbox this morning while we were sleeping. All those little parent hacks that you don't even have to tell your kids about.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep up with. But
Yeah, I think with a lot of screen time things, it's having that conversation about what the expectations are, and then also putting a couple of guardrails in place on like time locks or whatever the case may be. That
yeah,
do both can work
yeah.
depending on your kids.
Finally, you just threw this link in here for Builder Mint. I think that's how you say it. Is this one you've
Yeah,
tried?
Builderment. So it's kind of a lightweight version of like a Factorio, um, or a game I think I mentioned we had tried a while back called Sandship that was just ridden with in-app purchases. But this one is just kind of a. I heard about it in I think the Incomparable podcast network Slack. Um, but it's just very you harvest the resources, you expand your tech tree, you go from logs to planks to frames, gears, you build more and more complex things, and you're getting all these conveyor belts going to create things as efficient as possible. And I think it's just meant to be one of those kind of relaxing organization things. One interesting thing, this is the first time I've opened the store page on my iMac, and it shows the little cloud download button, because I've purchased it previously, and it says designed for iPad, not verified for Mac OS. So
Mm,
I think that's the first time I've looked at one of these things where the iPad app will run on an Apple Silicon Mac, but good luck, right? No developer support. Who knows what'll break?
yeah.
But because all of the libraries and the chip is there, it can run. So I'll have to see what that looks like on Mac at some point.
Yeah, yeah, because mine actually says will not run on the Mac and requires a Mac OS 11 and a Mac with an M1 chip. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
I think two things I'd note about the game. So it is an active play game. So it's not like one of these idle games where you play and then you put it away and it's just running on a timer, and then you come back and you've accumulated stuff. You have to have the game open and running the simulation. And also there are in-app purchases for gems, but they don't affect the gameplay at all. It's purely to buy cosmetic items
Mm,
that you can add. So it's almost more like a tip jar style in-app purchase. So I like that. It's not it's a game that I know I can let my son play on the iPad, and he's not gonna get stuck just because he's not paying to unlock the next level,
yeah,
which was true of like Sandship, which we had tried.
right. I just realized now that you might have caught this that we skipped over, or I skipped over console corner. Somehow my screen was scrolled down to the PC corner. So why don't we loop
I
back?
figured we'd loop back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you noticed PlayStation subscription service, which must be some sort of like Game Pass type thing,
Yep.
or
Yeah. It's a direct competitor to Game Pass. They're saying it's combining PlayStation Now and PS Plus. Um, I think this. is maybe like more of a leak than an official announcement. Or they're, it's one of those things where the company is kind of floating it so they know, so people know what's coming.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of like what we know, right? Which is there's a monthly fee, everyone wants subscription revenue, and you get some kind of rotating back catalog of games as well as new releases. And I don't think it wasn't clear to me if it also had that streaming component or it was just stuff you would be able to download onto your PS5, assuming you can get one. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's interesting because I think basically everybody wants to be in this space, and as we've seen, Apple went a very different direction with Apple Arcade, where it's a subscription and you download, no streaming component. Xbox has kind of the back catalog and rotating new games, but you also get xCloud for streaming. This one sounds a little different, and then of course there's there's Google Stadia and the other, and Amazon Luna and the other streaming ones as well. So it fits into that space, and it'll be interesting to see where it shakes out. I assume it'll only run on a PlayStation, and of course, hardware wise, this console generation's sales are pretty restricted by all of the pandemic driven supply chain issues. So
Mm-hmm.
um, that limits their subscriber base a little bit there. I think we'll see if it launches in 2022 what it actually ends up looking like.
Yeah, I always assumed for whatever reason, just because of Xbox having it, I assumed PlayStation actually had that. Like when I heard about PlayStation Plus, I assumed that was also like a gaming catalog as well, but doesn't. I guess it hasn't been really, other than offering online multiplayer games and a few monthly titles. Like in the terms of like getting access to a game each, a couple games each month, which Xbox has with Xbox Live subscription. But yeah, not the Game Pass side of it, where it's just like 100 games that you have available, and new ones are added all the time. And then as long as you're paying subscriber, you get those games basically to use for
Yeah.
air quotes free. So as my kids think of it, anyways.
Oh, I was incorrect. I guess PlayStation Now does support streaming to a PC, so potentially you
This
you
could
would
get.
be able to do this. Yeah, access the library that way.
Yeah, it does
Um,
feel like so that like I've talked about before, the Xbox X that we have that's in our closet hiding right now and should be opened up next weekend. Maybe we'll see. But it does feel like that's kind of like I was thinking of it as this is maybe the last console I buy. Like realistically, because we've had the Xbox now for I forget when the Xbox One came out, but let's say it's 4 years now, 3 or 4 years, something like that. So if this goes 3 4 years ish, like by that point, I feel like
mhm.
the cloud gaming thing that Google's building on with Stadia and Amazon Luna, I feel like that's going to be more common and much easier to sell for Microsoft, PlayStation, etc., and not having to deal with hardware anymore, other than at their server farms or whatever. It feels like
Right.
that's going to be the play in the long term, because I can't imagine like the console hardware is just a headache, I would think, on multiple fronts, other than the prestige of being able to say we've sold this many consoles, so now game developers get in line to build for a console. Yeah, and maybe I mean there's more to it than obviously just the simple that, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
think there's some interesting stuff in that space, right? You don't. I think the more cynical take, right, is that it's a way of instead of a one-time sale for a console and a one-time sale for a game disc, it's, well, now we've got you, right? You're
yeah,
you're subscribed, you're paying monthly, your ongoing revenue indefinitely, and obviously there's capital costs, and usually the consoles I think are sold at a loss, right?
mm-hmm.
Even though an Xbox or PS5 seems pretty expensive relative to the component cost, it's well below a gaming PC of comparable performance, right? Whereas you buy a high end server that you run in a data center somewhere, slice that up into however many user sessions you can fit on it, and you now can charge per hour or per month or however you do the pricing, and get a much bigger return on that hardware investment.
Yeah,
And it's fully interchangeable, right? It can be used for other things when people aren't playing. It can immediately, one user stops playing, another user is now assigned that machine. There's a lot of efficiencies and scale and so forth that I think these companies like.
Yeah.
The dollar signs are rolling in their eyes. I think the question might be is like, do you get into well, there's this kind of light console that you have that does the streaming really, really well, like really good video decoding, really good controller management, right, on your local end. Or does it just get built into TVs, or is it more like the Apple TV box or whatever the case may be? I think that's probably where we'll see some interesting developments over the next 5 years. And then of
Yeah.
course VR is hanging out there, and
Mm-hmm.
that right now has to still be local, right?
Yeah, well, that's the
So
thing. It often, like, as much as we feel like, okay, they've advanced, like, you look at the latest NHL or the latest Fortnite or the latest whatever version of each game on a modern hardware platform, you think, okay, well, that's as good as it's going to get, really. Like, how much better
right.
does it need to be? And then something like VR comes along, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're going to need, the massive CPU console thing for in the future, even though it feels kind of dumb and pointless right now with all the blocky graphics and things in the metaverse, etc. but but yeah, that's going to only get better, obviously, in terms of the graphic quality and the reality of it and the sound quality, etc. And then you add in
Hmm.
something like Nintendo, even too, obviously, where they do unique things with the hardware that other platforms aren't doing, and have sort of gone left, whatever, right instead of left, I guess. As my hands go the opposite way.
Yeah, I think that in Nintendo, they're all about was it blue ocean strategy, right? Like they want to go where no one else is in weird and interesting ways.
Yeah, and have fun with it. So, anyways, that's us speaking out of our butts on stuff that we just
Yes.
we have only enough experience with in
don't
our home.
don't know anything about. Yeah. Um,
You had listed the last thing here in Console Corner, the Sonic 2 movie, which I was thinking of Sonic the video game, but obviously Sonic movie.
right.
The
Yes.
trailer launched, and did you? So first of all, I guess your family, your kid, you guys all saw the first Sonic.
Yeah. So we've seen the first Sonic movie 2 or 3 times, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, my son enjoys it. It's got it seems to be about age appropriate for 7 or 8. There's some a little bit of the kind of gross out humor that appeals to kids at that age, but otherwise it's a pretty tame movie. Um, I think pretty funny and enjoyable. I think it got kind of weirdly panned by some critics, but I thought it's pretty fun for a video game movie. I mean, the the comparisons for video game movies, it's not hard to be up there.
Yeah, the bar
There are
is
a lot of
pretty
bad
low.
ones over the years. Yeah. And so I think it's pretty solid, and if they can kind of recapture that magic, and especially Jim Carrey's really zany take on Dr. Robotnik is pretty good, and it looks like he's back in based on the trailer, as well as some of the minor characters that had kind of some funny background moments. They show up in the trailer. One thing that amused me is the opening sequence shows the Space Needle here in Seattle in like an establishing shot, and then all the downtown action scenes are very clearly not downtown Seattle, because it's like, well, for one thing, it's flat, and we're our downtown is like this right down to the water. But yeah, it's probably filmed in like Vancouver or Toronto or something.
Yeah.
It seems like that's where a lot of movie making happens, or Cleveland.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks fun. I'm sure when it comes out. I doubt we're gonna go see it in the theater come April, but whenever it's available for streaming, we'll probably watch it that way.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that, like the first one, anyways, and I anticipate the second being similar kind of vibe. Is like it captured or grabbed our kids' attention, anyways, too, in a way that I wouldn't have guessed would. For having come through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like we all talked about earlier, Star Wars movies, all those kind of like hyper realistic, intense, and even our kids loving like all the Marvel Disney Plus series that are on right now, which are very much more realism based than like this kind of like cartoony, violency, fantastical stuff. And maybe it's just a sort of like the counterweight to that more intense realism that they enjoyed. But yeah, like them and their friends all loved the first one, and often talk about wanting to watch it again. Wish we'd watch it again. And my wife and I are often like, "Do we need to? Do we?"
Yeah.
But
So sometimes the movie night selection is a little bit of like, oh, could we pick this one instead? But I like Sonic. If it's not weeks back to back, I think it's a fine entry in the canon.
Friends of ours, for movie night tip for parents out there, the friends of ours for Christmas anyways, for the season, they just put all the movie suggestions. Everybody gets to put a movie suggestion in a hat, and then they draw a movie out of the hat, a piece of paper or whatever, and that's the movie they watch. So it settles a lot of the arguments. It was funny because we were talking about this, sharing notes on what we did and over the weekend. We had a fight, sort of very loosely used the word fight, but over watching Home Alone, the first one, or Elf, and Elf was the one that won. And then our friends were saying how they just pick a one out of the hat or whatever, and that's sort of how they get over that. Although we have very different kids as well, so it may still promote fights.
Well, it's funny because Elf was one that we've had in the rotation, and it's a it's a Christmas favorite of my wife and I. But my son specifically asked not to watch Elf as one of our Christmas movies this year. But we have done Noel and the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special and Muppet Christmas Carol, and we'll probably work in a few more as the season approaches.
That's funny. Muppet Christmas
and growing
Carol.
Up, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say Muppet Christmas Carol is one that our kids, two of the three anyways, don't like because they think it's too scary, don't want to watch it. But then, Elf, my one son was like really against, and we were trying to figure out why. Because then we started watching because that's the one that won, and we were watching it, and he's laughing and enjoying it, and then we realized it was that awkward, like there's an awkward scene where he pulls a woman's like lingerie off the shelf or whatever and holds it up and gives it as a gift to his dad, right? And that was the thing that was like just made him uncomfortable because I think it's an emotional thing. He gets emotional because the person on screen is being embarrassed, so he feels a little embarrassed for them, and that's the like level of awkwardness. Whereas the Muppets Christmas Carol, scary, kind of monster, ghosty, whatever.
It's the empathy angle more than the sort of jump scares or hauntings or whatnot. It's interesting that things like, I think I was surprised really quick that Christmas Carol does appeal to my son because it is, Muppets and an older movie, and it's not, modern animation, but it's still, fun and funny, even a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But I think if we skip over to Tabletop Corner, but kind of wrapping up on this theme, I was curious if your family has any holiday game traditions, because I know family gathering, you're going to have some board games, some card games coming out. Do you have any that are particular to your holiday celebrations?
We don't really, other than like the most basic of quote air quotes gaming of putting together a puzzle. That's like but there isn't any specific other than just a time to play more board games generally and things like that. But and up here it'd be like getting out, going sledding and things like that would be sort of things we also generally do if there's enough snow. We'll see what happens here. But we don't have a specific sort of genre or a specific game even that we would pull out at holiday, at Christmas time and things like that. How about you? Is there stuff that's specific to the season?
Well, definitely puzzle. We have a specific, or I mean, my parents still have a specific Christmas puzzle, which is the night before Christmas poem is all the way around the border, and it's a scene of like Santa Claus delivering presents. And I think they still build that basically every year. So that was always one. And then depending on who was hosting, there would be like my different grandparents had a different set of board games available, so it would be kind of a fun opportunity to break out something a little different that we didn't have at home to play. And certainly for my mom and I, Scrabble is always a go-to when we are gathered together. So that usually works its way in. I think at when I was younger, Canasta was one that was kind of in our heavy card game rotation. But we haven't done that as well. So I don't think we've really established one.
Yeah, I was gonna say we kind of come from. I think both of us come from the sort of bounce or what's the word I'm looking for, the ping pong, is that the right word? Like my parents' generation, it was like card games is what you get together and play at Christmas or Easter or whatever. A family gathering is card games. That's all you do. And my generation introduced the like Settlers of Catan and sort of these more complicated board games. And so now we're kind of like those don't. Yeah, we're trying to bring some of those along maybe as what we would normally do, but they're not as quick and easy to hop into in the middle of like cooking a turkey or whatever. Right. And so there's kind of maybe our kids aren't sure which. They're just going to play Fortnite. Actually, what am I saying? That's their holiday tradition.
Well, now there is like Fortnite Monopoly, so maybe there's an angle there.
My son is always like shocked that there's like, Dad, did you know that there's like a Fortnite Monopoly now? Or there's, Dad, did you know there's Harry Potter Monopoly? We're like,
Yeah,
yes, the licensing
yeah.
continues.
I think Monopoly was one of the ones that, I mean, I remember that even in, at least in the 90s, like you go to
Hmm.
the game store and there was like 14 different kinds of Monopoly.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I would say I feel like I've kind of missed out passing on some of the card game traditions that either came from my parents or actually even my grandparents. But we did recently try. I tried playing a hand or two of gin with my son, um, and kind of teaching him like he understands getting sets and runs from other uh, branded card games that we've played, but just like regular playing cards doesn't hasn't come up too much. So yeah, we'll see if that is one that keeps coming into the rotation. Gin and Rummy were other ones that were in my regular rotation as a kid,
yeah.
along with Pitch and Canasta and others. Um,
There's a lot of I don't know the names. I don't even know what the names are. But we had a lot of dice games too that we would play of just like
mm,
rolling dice to try and build up a higher number, and you're betting or like gambling on whether you're going to roll a 6 or a 2 or whatever it was. I can't remember now. It's games that my dad often has kept mostly in his head, and we have to remember the rules each time we try and play. Those kind of like coming from a poor farming background where dice was basically the most expensive thing toy you had, and kind of like using those as a basis for the gaming, but in a very safe, non-gambling kind of official gambling kind of way, obviously, and because cards were not allowed, and so dice were somehow okay to play with. So
right, I forgot that specific for it's like specific Mennonite is very much no cards whatsoever, even if you're not gambling with them,
yeah,
right? Because it's too much like the poker or blackjack or
yeah,
whatever.
just the idea. It's like, I mean, that's my grandparents and an older generation, which my parents are
Hmm.
long since left behind. But yeah, definitely that idea of like, well, just like dancing leads to sex because you're standing up.
Yeah.
So do cards with pictures on them lead to poker and gambling and losing all your financial stability. It's
Interesting.
logical.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed you mentioned before we wrap up here is Scorekeeper, for keeping track of scores, and it's just like it sounds, an iOS app basically for doing that, which is really
Yeah. This is one that I've used for years. It's a good one. It's a useful little tool.
yeah. And actually, it's funny because the game. The developer of that, Matt Ricks, is a Canadian guy actually out in BC, so just north of you. But he first hit big, like this is way back in the very first iterations of the App Store. Train Yard was a game he made that I played a ton of.
Oh yeah, I
And
played a ton of Train Yard. I forgot that was him.
yeah, and so it's the same developer. I don't know what's happened to him since, but it was kind of this like drawing your trains to go to the right colored track and things like that, and you had to try and make them end up in the right spot, and also mixing in a bit of color theory and how colors mix together and then become a new color train as it goes through. And it was really, really ingenious. And yeah, I don't know where or how he ended up. Like that was back iOS 8 days, iOS 7, something like that. So last update is for iOS 11 coming soon. Update coming soon is the last Train Yard update. So I don't imagine it's kept up very much, but yeah, just a funny
Yeah, and
legacy.
even Scorekeeper has not been updated since September 2017. So, at some point it may run into the Apple backwards compatibility wall.
Yeah,
But in the meantime, it's this nice, little rainbow colored way of just keeping track of points. In a game that maybe doesn't have an easy built-in scoring track, or even just at the end of the game, it's a good way to just use your tally. Obviously, pencil and paper work fine, but
I know.
if you have a phone handy, which you probably do, it can be a nice way to just quickly uh, check scores across a game.
It's funny. I noticed it says this app has been updated by Apple to display the Apple Watch app icon. So I don't know if there's like an Apple Watch add-on that they automatically did or something. But anyways, not a yeah. It looks like 2017 was the last time the app was updated. But
Yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff that the App Store can do on the back end, especially once they moved to the LLVM Clang tool chain that is used for app development right now. There, what you submit is almost like not the final app, and Apple can do some kind of repackaging and optimization on the cloud side. Um, for example, like when you download an app, even if it was built to support multiple devices, you're usually only getting the version that supports the device you're downloading on. So there's probably some interesting things there where they can keep an app going even if the developer isn't actively updating it. But eventually, some of these older libraries and compatibility things will go away as iOS and macOS and whatnot advance.
Yeah.
But for now, it's a nice little tool for the board gamer and iOS user in your life.
Yeah, I know Matt Ricks' Twitter account is still the same photo that I remember from like 2016, 2017, but he has tweeted recently, so just hasn't updated the profile picture. So anyways, just curious to catch up where these folks are. I think I even interviewed him on a podcast maybe I set up one time a long time ago. I don't know, I can't remember now, but anyways, nostalgia for the old days.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I think you look back to some of those early entries, kind of jumping back to Apple Corner, there's some whatever happened to that game or whatever happened to that developer. I think we've talked about like Flight Control was an early iPad favorite, and the developer got bought, and the game just eventually got pulled from the store. But like there were some early, really interesting touch control innovation stuff, and it'd be nice to see more of those come back to like Apple Arcade Plus, for example.
Yeah, if they like hit up for someone like this developer, Matt, for like a modern version of that game, that would be awesome because my kids would have never even had a chance to play Train Yard, or anything like that. So, all right, well, we should probably wrap up at this point and wrapping up our 2022 as well. For our 2022, getting ahead of myself. 2021, we're still in, but
yes.
Thank you all for listening wherever you happen to be in the world. I know we often joke about small number of listeners and things like that, but it doesn't really matter. Mike. I'm looking at Mike on Twitter. That's not who I'm talking to. My brain is clearly fried. Nick and I. I was just like, this guy has a really funny avatar, and his name's Mike, and I was like, then my brain was like, Mike and I have been talking.
Yeah. I have been called Mike before, but that's because I have Mikes in my family. My grandma definitely did that,
right.
But sometimes.
That's
close enough.
Yeah, I'm just channeling your grandma right now on this. But
yeah,
yes,
there we go.
Thank you for listening wherever you happen to be and however many of you are out there. Nick and I do this just for the fun of talking video games, obviously, but happy to have you along for the journey. And we'll be back again in 2022 with more episodes every other Tuesday. So in the meantime, thank you for listening to 25 Cents, our video game podcast. You can find me on Twitter at iChris.
And you can find me on Twitter and most everywhere else as Ultra Nerd. That's NURD.
And be sure to find 25 Cents wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, if you're listening, you're subscribed. We record this every other Tuesday on Twitch, twitch.tv/GSFM. And check out the other podcasts at Goodstuff.network and the Good Stuff Patreon, patreon.com/Goodstuff. Join us in the Discord, chatting video games and many other things. All right, that's enough. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Yeah, we always find something to talk about even when we don't have many notes.
I know.
I think unfortunately 2022 is going to be the year of blockchain nonsense in every game. So we'll have that to complain about most weeks.
Well, we should have established a betting pool, I guess, for which one of us falls to the blockchain first, because it feels like I've been so surprised that the people, like, not that somehow like more their character is in question or anything like that, but just it's been interesting to me to see who has all of a sudden like gone full blockchain or whatever. Well,
yeah, what was the one? I think I actually just unfollowed him. Jonathan Mann of Song a Day Man.
Yeah.
He does the theme for he did the theme for the Accidental Tech podcast among other projects. But he got really into NFTs a couple months ago and was like issuing songs as NFTs, and then was getting like really combative on Twitter when people were like, "Hey, I was always a fan. What are you doing?" And so he's often in that world trying to cash in, I guess.
It seems bizarre.
So,
I don't know.
I guess we should have done a 2022 predictions episode, but that's not really our jam, I think.
Yeah, no, it'd be fun, like if we did crossover Good Stuff one here, if everybody's hanging out sometime and we want to record like you said, a crossover episode or whatever would be kind of fun to do, just catch up on gaming and related conversations. But
Yeah, we gotta get Kyle and Kenny and talk baseball stadium food, video game
yeah,
content or something.
well, with all the like, I've seen on TikTok now too referenced, like my husband got into a lawnmower simulator game, and like there's just like so many niche little weird video games that are being made. I yeah, there'll be some sort of like baseball stadium food simulator before long if
I
Kyle and Kenny
I'm
don't
I
develop themselves.
Yeah, is there like a food? There's got to be like a food court simulator, right? There's all those games that let you run like a little coffee stand or hot dog stand,
Yeah,
and you have to like serve the customers who are coming faster and faster. There's a lot of games in that genre. So
yeah, like the couch co-op food. There's that one that's really good.
Overcooked
Yeah,
is
Overcooked.
pretty
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, that gets everybody yelling at each other. So
Yes, yeah, definitely have to select for games that don't greatly increase the family conflict. I imagine, especially with multiple kids.
yeah, it is an interesting dynamic that like because of COVID, especially you're not experiencing some of those things that by like because how old you're 7 or 8 something like that, like
Yeah,
play dates
yeah,
and
turned
stuff.
8.
Yeah,
Yeah,
play dates aren't really a thing that you have to even think about right now, and similar for
yeah.
us,
I
like
mean,
it's yeah.
yeah, he's fully vaccinated now, but like the usual play date, maybe even getting into like sleepovers with friends in the next couple years just doesn't seem like it's on the horizon anytime soon. Outdoor play dates we've done, right? But it's colder, so that's happening less often now as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
anyway,
We should. We'll have to try and figure out a way, or I mean, we can coordinate this obviously in Discord, but to do like a Civ 6 game at some point. Like,
yeah, I should have time over the break. I think we can figure out, a couple hours to do a game. I don't know if we want to. I guess you kind of have to start from the beginning, right? I don't think you can.
yeah, for a new one, I think,
Yeah.
because even turn-based, like, well, turn-based, you can do like sort of. I'm assuming sort of like, you could spread it out over a week, or does it have to be like live 3 hour? I can't remember how that works.
I don't remember. I know Civ 4 multiplayer, the way the game, it was like each of you had a copy of the save locally, and so there would be like sync issues sometimes. But
Right.
um, when you resumed a game together, you could actually pick from any of the civs that were in the save. So you could like run a game and then have someone join you and take over one of the AIs, right?
Oh,
That
gotcha.
had been playing
Yeah.
and just continue from their turn. I
Right.
don't know what it is for Civ 6. I'd have to check
Yeah.
it out. But yeah, I'm taking the week between Christmas and New Year's off, so I'll be around. It could be
Yeah.
fun to. We haven't done a lot of multiplayer together.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I should turn
and
off well, I forgot to do my. Where is it? Thanks for watching. Boop. That slide. Got these fancy slides from
ooh.
Ecamm,
Oh, and little Christmas lights.
but they're
Nice.
not. Oh yeah, they are animated. I forgot. Yeah, they're like they do blink on and off. All right,
Oh yeah.
let's turn the recording off. Say goodbye for now. Boop.
All right.